All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends Show, and my guest this week is a very special guest, someone I've just recently met, the very famous Boyer Coe. Boyer, you were, I think, a four-time Mr. Universe and a big contender in the Mr. Olympia for many years, so it's an honor to talk to you.
John, thank you for having me on.
All right. Well, I know you've had a very extensive career, Boyer. I think you started all the way back in the 60s and competed up until the 90s, I believe, which was unusual for, I think, a lot of bodybuilders today. Most bodybuilders don't last that long. So I know you were born in Louisiana. Is that correct, Boyer?
That's correct, yes.
How did you get started in the sport of bodybuilding?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was always interested in just being big and strong. The first time I recall seeing a bodybuilding publication, I was about 5 years old.
Wow.
And I was interested. I was drawn to the cover of the magazine because they had this big, powerful guy on the cover. Can't remember who it was at the time, but I couldn't read, and I didn't have any money in my pocket. It only cost 35 cents. So I swiped the magazine out of the grocery store, went home and read it, and I didn't really associate you had to lift weights to do that. I just thought you got big and strong, and then you lifted the weights. So I knew that's what I wanted to be. Wanted to be like that, and I was always active as a kid. I was, I could run pretty fast, and I was, could do, basic calisthenics and chins and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess about the time I was maybe 12 or 13, the first little gym opened up. It was called the Lake Charles Athletic Club, and I must have been one of the first 10 people to join up. And about that time, I really started buying the bodybuilding magazines. At that time, the only magazine that was widely available was Strength and Health, Bob Hoffman's publications. So even though they only came out once a month, I must have been down at the newsstand once a week, hoping that I would see a new issue. Never had enough money to buy a subscription, but I would buy it certainly as a new issue. Each issue came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically what I learned, or how to go about bodybuilding, because people just kind of lifted weights, but it really wasn't anything. People had no idea what bodybuilding was about, or for that matter, the Mr. America contest. And then somewhere about the time I was, say, maybe 11 or 12 years old, Hercules came out with Steve Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I remember watching that movie, and I was so excited about seeing that movie and so inspired. The movie theater was downtown, and it was a good 5 or 6 miles from my house. I didn't bother to ride the bus home. I ran home that night. And I had, didn't have any weight, so the only thing I could think of to do was, well, I'm going to do push-ups. So I did push-ups all night long. I would do push-ups rest of the next morning. Felt like someone had hit me in the chest with an axe. My chest was so sore. But I was really inspired, and I wanted to look like Steve Reeves. Even today, I think if you would go back, as far as bodybuilding has advanced, you'd see a photograph of Steve Reeves, and the people that are currently in bodybuilding, people would still want to look more like Steve Reeves.
Yeah, it's interesting how many people were inspired by Steve Reeves and by that movie. I just did an interview with Samir Bannout, Bill Grant, Mike Katz, and they all mentioned Steve Reeves in that Hercules movie.
Well, and because basically we're all about the same age, some are a little bit younger, some a little bit older, but I think we grew up and it was just out of pure love, the best time in bodybuilding. I was thinking about that this morning before you called it. I felt so fortunate because I virtually knew everybody in the sport, the pioneers. I can think back how fortunate I was. Every photo session I ever did for Joe Weider was there at the photo session. It didn't matter if it was, like John Balick or Mike Neville or Harry Langdon or Bob Gardner. All those photographers were there, but Joe was behind the scenes directing everything. And I think the guys today really missed out on that, not having Joe's inspiration there.
Yeah.
And then also, I was personal friends with Vic Tanning, with Jack LaLanne. I was a close associate with Arthur Jones. Those guys were the real pioneers of the sport. And I got to know and work with those guys. I mean, if there's anything that I can say that I value the most in bodybuilding, more than any contest I ever won, was all the fantastic friends that I've made along the way.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. So when you started, Boyer, wasn't it Red Larile who started to coach you and started to teach you how to train?
Well, interesting story. The first guy that helped me out was a good friend of mine, Ken Gilbo. He was 7 years older than me.
Okay.
And this guy was a big guy. I mean, he was 6'2", about 225, and I watched him in the gym. I never talked to anybody in the gym. I was more like a sponge. I just sat and observed, and I realized that this guy kind of knew what he was doing. So I approached him, asked him if he would help me out with a routine, and he did. And I responded real fast. I mean, I really took to bodybuilding. So in about 1960, Red Larile won the Mr. America contest.
Okay.
And I always remember, I'm looking at Strength and Health magazine, and I see where a guy from Louisiana had won the Mr. America. So I told my dad, I said, hey, Dad, a guy from Louisiana won the Mr. America. I said, you know what? I bet I can do that. He kind of laughed, and that was about the end of it. But a few months later, Red happened to be on his way going to Dallas to give an exhibition, and he happened to stop. He had a friend in Lake Charles where I lived, and he gave a posing exhibition at the YMCA. I didn't know anything about it, but I happened to be watching, it was on a Friday night, watching the news, and it said the new Mr. America would give a posing exhibition, posing demonstration at the YMCA. So man, immediately I beat it down to the YMCA and I watched him pose. That was the first time I'd ever seen a bodybuilder in person. And I knew for sure that's what I wanted to do. So a couple of years later, I guess I was about 14. By the time I was 16, Ray Roy, who his brother was famed Alvin Roy, he had a gym in Lake Charles. And we were on our way to Baton Rouge to go to Alvin's place. And we stopped off in Lafayette. And that's where Red had just opened up his gym.
Okay.
So and that's when I first officially met Red. And I told him, I said, look, as soon as I graduate from high school, I'm going to be back here. I want to train under you. I want to learn everything you know. That's how we became friends. And we've been best friends ever since. And he's been my mentor through my entire life. This guy really knows not only bodybuilding, but business. I mean, I would have to say he has the most, and I'm not coloring it anyway, he has the most successful health club in the world.
Wow.
And when I say that, let me give you a little description of it. It covers 20 acres of land. His parking lot will hold 3,000 cars. He has over 20,000 members. 8,000 people a day work out there. He's got 250 employees. That gives you the scope of his club. His gym, his area, is over 300,000 square feet. And this is in Lafayette, Louisiana. And you got to remember, it's not that big of a town. It might be 150,000 people. But because of the oil industry, it's an extremely progressive and rich town. And that's what's made his business so successful. And the fact that he's always, since he started in business, his place has been under constant construction or improvement. I mean, he didn't start out that way. You know, he started out with a very small business. Actually, he started out with $600 that he borrowed from his dad, made his own weights, and opened up the gym, and it's grown to this huge enterprise.
Amazing.
But he's the guy that originally inspired me. He's the guy that really taught me how to pose, you know, because he was a perfectionist. So when I trained every afternoon after I trained, we had an old rub-down table in the back in a storeroom there, and I practiced posing on that rub-down table. So he definitely, I owe him a lot.
Wow. So this business is still going now, Boyer?
Oh, yes, definitely. He's been in Lafayette. See, I went back for the 50th anniversary, so he's been in business now 52 years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's an incredible place to see.
So,
He's got everything. I mean, but besides the gym and everything, he's got, I think, 3 or 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. He's even got. He was the first place in the state of Louisiana to have indoor tennis courts.
wow.
You know, you think of it. I mean, he's got a restaurant inside there. He's got a bar. He's got a Starbucks coffee in it. Whatever you want. I told him the only thing you're missing is if you had condominiums on site, people would never have to leave.
Right.
Just stay right there.
So tell us a little bit about your training as a teenager, Boyer. I remember reading some stuff about you, and you were like a very, very strong teenager. I think you bench pressed, I can't remember how much weight in high school, and you had really big arms, and you, like you said, you responded to bodybuilding really fast.
I did respond very, very fast. I mean, I just really took to it. Yeah, one of the big things I had in high school, I was more, before I got really into bodybuilding, I wanted to be strong.
Okay.
And at that time, to be able to bench press 400 pounds, that was kind of like a magic number. So I made up my mind, I wanted to bench press 400 pounds before I graduated from high school.
Wow.
That was my goal. So I guess, yeah, I mean, that would be nothing in the way of weights today, you know, but I managed to bench press 400 pounds before I graduated from high school, and I think I must have weighed about 179, 180 pounds at the time. So that was quite satisfying for me. As best I can remember back in those days, this goes back to 1964, there was only myself and another teenager, can't recall his name, but he lived in San Francisco. Never had an opportunity to meet him, but he was very strong in the bench press too. I've always wanted to hope that I could meet him one day and maybe we could have a contest, but never had an opportunity to meet a guy.
Yeah, I remember reading something in, I think it was Muscle Builder magazine, and you were talking about visualization, and you said when you wanted to bench press that 400 pounds, you were writing down 400 all day long on a piece of paper, and you just thought about it all the time.
I got in trouble several times because I was in school. I would sit, and when I didn't have a piece of paper, I would carve 400 into the desk. So several times people would pass it. What the hell are you doing marking up the desk here? You know, had 400 everywhere, you know.
Wow.
But motivating it. And then you mentioned earlier about the big arms. My arms seemed to always grow faster than anything else. I never did anything special for arms. I remember reading an article, and it had an old picture how Steve Reeves used to love to do incline curls. So, you know, as a young bodybuilder, we always believe there's a secret. So I said, man, that's the secret to big arms. So I started doing incline curls. And that was the only thing I ever did for biceps, was incline. And so I was so proud of myself one day because everybody always remarked, you know, you had that split in your bicep.
Yeah.
So I said, and no one, I thought, you know, I would literally live in the gym, so I could do that. And no one else could do it. So, man, I'm so proud of myself. So that night I get home, I said, hey, Dad, you know, I said, I can do something nobody else in the gym can do. He said, what's that? I said, well, look at my arm. I said, I can make my bicep split. So he said, yeah. I said, that's pretty good. Now, here's my dad who's worked all day. He's tired. He's just trying to eat his dinner. He could probably care less about that. So after we finished dinner, he rolls up his sleeve. He said, let me see if I can do that. He could do it. He never lifted a weight in his life. So it was just genetic. So all of a sudden, my big ego was rapidly deflated. Here's another guy who could do the same thing. You know?
What does your dad do for a living, Boyer?
Well, my dad was a sheet metal worker. He worked at the refineries there, and then he retired. And about that time, we had health food stores. So we had 3 different health food stores, and he did that. He was always into fitness, but in his day, and he was an outstanding athlete, football player and a boxer, but they discouraged people from lifting weights. It says, you know, it'll make you muscle bound. Even though he encouraged me to lift weights, and he lifted some, but he was never able to get into it. He was too worried about busy making a living for the family.
Right. I remember you credited your dad with not only showing you a good upbringing, but also just crediting you for being what a real man is all about.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, he was good enough in boxing that he could have probably turned professional. I've never seen anyone as fast as hand-eye coordination, as fast as him. But about that time, I came along, so you had to had to band up and make a living for the family.
Right. So when did you first compete then, Boyer?
I tell you what, the first contest I went to, I was 15 years old. It was a Mr. All-South Teenage contest in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay. No experience. This was even before I met Red. No experience in posing. I just copied what I saw in Strength and Health magazines. Didn't even have a pair of posing trunks. I had a swimsuit, and I kind of rolled it up so it would be short. And I went to the contest, and I think I ended up maybe 5th. I remember Gable Boudreaux won, a guy from New Orleans, and then there was a guy, Billy Parker from Georgia. But it was a great experience for me because it was being part of something. I didn't expect to do anything, and I was so excited when I got on stage. I forgot the little posing routine I had made up, so I had to kind of ad-lib and get through it. But the bug had really bit me. I knew that's what I wanted to do. Now, the second contest I entered was 2 years later. I went to the Mr. Louisiana contest. I had a week's notice. Okay. By that time, I had a pair of posing trunks. I knew I was going to do a little better. The interesting thing about that show, I was so nervous, and I mean, it was in January, and it was cold, and it was raining downtown the YMCA in New Orleans. So, I'm so afraid I'm going to miss out on something. So we're back in the pump-up room, and I'm just pumping away. All of a sudden, I notice there's nobody left in the pump-up room. So I said, what the hell happened? So they had called everybody out on stage, and I'm the last guy. So I'm so excited, I run out the wrong door. Well, the door I go out slams shut, and I'm in the alley. So I'm outside in about 29-degree weather with nothing on but my posing trunks and baby oil. And I can't get back in because the door is locked.
Right.
So I run all the way down around the block, come in through the entrance, through the crowd. Luckily, about the time I come through the crowd, they call my name, so I jump up on stage. Long story short, I ended up being third, and I won most muscular and a couple of body parts. So on the way home, my dad says, that was pretty slick how you made that entrance. I never had the nerve to tell him that it was just by accident. I was just trying to get into the contest. It was my stupidity of running out the wrong door.
That's a great story. I remember reading that story a long time ago, and I don't know if you saw the movie Birdman with Michael Keaton, but something similar happened to him. He's doing a Broadway play, and he goes outside to get a smoke or something, and then he's got a robe on with just, I think, his underwear or something, because he had a bedroom scene that he's doing in the play, and the robe gets caught in the door, and he has to take it off and run outside and go around and go through the front of the theater and come up through the audience like you did. So I always remember that story.
I tell you, the interesting thing about that, my heart was beating so fast, because you want everything official contest, and here I am coming through my feet are filthy. But I didn't even feel anything. I was numb. I was so excited. But I managed to get on stage and do whatever was necessary to at least complete my posing routine.
That's a great story. So didn't you win Mr. Louisiana when you were still a teenager?
Yeah. Well, I wanted. Let's see. I came out there. Yeah. So the next year, later. That was in January. In May, about 3 days before I graduated from high school, they had the Mr. New Orleans contest. Okay. Now, at the time, the Mr. New Orleans contest was a very famous contest. Actually, it's older than the Mr. America contest.
Wow.
Mr. America was started, I think, the AAU Mr. America.
Right.
Started in 1939. The first Mr. New Orleans contest was held in 1932.
Wow.
So it's a really long history. And they used to hold it outside at Pontchartrain Beach. So you would draw enormous crowds because it was the first night that they opened an amusement park. Mm-hmm. So the first contest I won was the Mr. New Orleans contest, and that was probably the biggest crowd that I've ever faced, because there was at least 10,000 people in the audience, because it was held outside. It was quite something. I didn't appreciate it at the time because I was just trying to win a contest, but when I was thinking about it, I've never competed in a contest with that many spectators in the audience.
Right. And how old were you then, Boyer?
I was 17.
17, wow. So where did you go from then? You went to the Teenage Mr. America also, didn't you, in 1965?
Actually, what happened after the Mr. New Orleans contest, they had a lot of local contests all throughout the South. Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. And one summer, and I think that was the summer, there was virtually a contest every weekend for, say, 12 weeks, 3 months.
Wow.
And I did all of them. You know, I just loved going and being around the people, being part of it, because you got to remember, in those days, nothing happened. The bodybuilding didn't even start till either the weightlifting or the powerlifting was done.
Right.
So I would enter the powerlifting contest rather than just wait around all day. And then usually around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, the bodybuilding contest would get underway. So that's what I did. But I was so in love with it, it didn't matter to me, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess the first national I won a lot of those area contests. I think I won the Mr. Texas and Mr. Oklahoma, some of those contests. And then the first, I guess, national contest I went to was in 1966. I went to San Jose, California, and competed in the Junior Mr. America contest. And that was the first time I saw Sergio Oliva.
Wow.
He won the Junior Mr. America. And I've never been impressed with a bodybuilder like when the first time I saw him. It was unbelievable. I remember right before the pre-judging, I was nervous. I went across the street to Howard Johnson's just to get something to drink. Mm-hmm. And Sergio happened to be in there. And I'll never will forget that he's got a gold suit on with a white silk shirt and a purple tie. and you know, my God, he was just so impressed. And he's eating fried chicken and mashed potatoes. I'm so nervous, I can't even think about eating. This is getting ready for the pre-judging. So, I mean, my eyes are just glued to him. And then backstage, we had to wait around so long, we got to be friends. We got to be talking. And he and I were friends, you know, forever. But my God, his physique was unbelievable. I remember specifically that day, they measured his waist at 27 inches. And each of his thighs were 29 inches.
Wow, crazy.
The V-taper the guy had was just unbelievable.
And they did the measurements right there at the show.
Yeah, that was right there it was backstage at the contest. Yeah. I think he was first. God, I think he was first. Bob Guida was second, and I think John Carvello from around San Jose or San Francisco was third.
You're right.
Sergio was just unbelievable. You know, he got bigger later on, but his shoulder to back to waist difference was just unbelievable. I don't think it was ever more impressed me than the only other guy that's ever been. I mean, I always say, well, Sergio was a true genetic freak. Mm-hmm. And the only other guy that probably ever came close to that was Paul Billette.
Yeah.
And he had that huge structure as well. And he was a bigger version of Sergio, but he really never had, he never could pose worth a damn. I don't know why he couldn't pose.
Right.
But standing there, he was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Sergio, because I grew up in Chicago, and when I was a teenager and I used to compete in teenage bodybuilding shows, Sergio used to come around. This was, I think, sort of after his peak, but I seen him guest pose a few times, and he was just so amazing to see in person. And I try to explain how great he looked back then, and you saw him even better. You saw him when he was really at his peak. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because people don't realize how great he was.
Oh, he was unbelievable. I remember. Like the Junior Mr. America, I'll always remember this. He was so good. He was so much better than everybody else in the contest. If he wouldn't have posed at all, if he would have just stood there, he would have still won the contest with everybody else posing as hard as they could.
Right.
He was just incredible. And yet he never really knew how to pose that well either.
Right.
He didn't have a lot of practice, but his physique was just so awesome. It was, in other words, it's like you see it, and it's more than your eyes can actually take in. You can't believe what you're seeing.
Exactly. And then you went into the Mr. USA that year also, right, Boyer? And you took second to Dennis Tenorino.
No, well, I tell you what, no, I think I continued to compete. I think it was in 60, maybe it was 66 or 67. But the guy, in other words, it's interesting how the AAU worked in those days. Mm-hmm. You sort of waited your turn.
Yeah.
Dennis Tenorino, the first time I met Dennis, I knew of Dennis because I saw him in the magazines. But the first time Dennis and I met in person was at the 1965 Teenage Mr. America contest. Okay. And it was in Philadelphia. That was the first time I ever been on an airplane. So I went to Philadelphia, mm-hmm. and Dennis was there, and they had tons of weightlifters. So the prejudging for the Teenage Mr. America didn't even get started till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my God!
We had to do that, and then we had to be back down there at 9 o'clock in the morning. That was the days you had to show proof of your athletic ability. Right, so you had to show all that stuff, and the interviews. But Dennis won, and then the next year, let's see, guy that won the Mr. America in '66. But the guys that came up all about the same time was me, Dennis, Jim Hayslip, who was an outstanding physique.
Right.
Really, he was about the closest thing we had in our era to Steve Reeves. Mm-hmm. Blonde, handsome, nice-looking guy, tall, broad-shouldered. Dennis won in '67, '68. Now, I'd be honest, in '68, everything went wrong that could possibly be going to the Mr. America. I lost all my luggage. I didn't have anything. My posing trunks, nothing. So about 15 minutes before the contest, I'm thinking, Jesus, maybe somebody will lend me a pair of posing trunks. So as luck would have it, a cab shows up. They got my luggage. I mean, I just had enough time to get my stuff and get over to the contest.
Okay.
So I felt I was in really good shape. And the funny thing about Jim Hayslip, he was good in every contest we competed in the South. He would win, I was second. We must have did that about 6 times. So I'm thinking, God, man, I know I can beat this guy. I think I'm as good as him. So I got a big response at the Mr. America contest. So then they started announcing the best body parts. I won all the body parts, I think, except best abdominals. Never had good abdominals. And I win the most muscular. Well, Jim doesn't win any body parts. And he don't even place in the top 5 in the most muscular. So I'm thinking backstage, man, I got to win this contest.
Right.
Yet he still won.
Wow.
But then, and I thought I was, to be honest, I thought I was in better shape in '68, or at least as good a shape as I was in '69. But it was his turn. So then in '69, I guess they decided, well, we'll let Boyer win, you know. But so I won in '69, and then that same year. An interesting story about the Nabba universe. See, back in those days, even though they had started the Mr. Olympia, the Nabba universe was a contest that had all the history.
Right.
And you really wanted to win that Nabba universe. That was of all the contests and everything I've done, that was the one I appreciated the most, was winning that Nabba universe the first time. So we go over there, and Hayslip is there because he had lost the year before to Dennis Tenorino.
Okay.
So I'm saying, well, God, it's got to be, maybe it's going to be my turn. Once again, bad luck. The night before I'm going to leave, my workout partner and I are training in the gym, and we used to use rosin on our hands, to get a better grip on the bench press. Well, he didn't really put it good enough in, so it falls in my eye. So I can't get the stuff out of my eye. So by the time I get to New York, my eye is swollen shut. I can't see. Man. So then you got an all-night flight to London. By the time I get to London, I'm really bad. It's horrible. So I said, okay, I don't know what to do. So I go to the hospital in London. The guy manages to clean the eye out, gives me a patch. So I look like a pirate. I'm walking around the hotel, and everybody asks me, is that the Mr. America? He only got one eye or something. So by the next morning, I took the patch off. My eye was okay. So as luck would have it, I was fortunate enough to win the Miss Universe. I finally bested Jim Hazlett. But he was a guy who could have went on and had a fantastic career.
Yeah.
Because he had the look. He had the look of a champion, but he just retired after that, you know. Well, he lives down there in Florida.
He lives right here in Tampa, yeah. I met him once before, yeah.
Very, very nice guy. Wonderful guy.
What was your...
Dennis was a great guy as well.
Yeah, I never got a chance to meet Dennis. I'm really sorry about that. I wish I could have met him before he passed away.
Yeah, he was lots and lots of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, when we competed in those days, it was a lot more camaraderie. I mean, I can remember when he won the Junior Mr. America contest. It wasn't like it is today. Everybody's got sponsorships. Hell, we paid our own way.
Yeah.
I can remember at one Junior Mr. America, I think the year Dennis won, we only had enough money for one hotel room. So Dennis, Chris Dickerson, and myself and somebody else all stayed in the same room. but we were just friendly competitors. You know,
right,
nobody.
Right.
It wasn't all the animosity you see in competitors today.
Yeah, I just interviewed Chris a couple days ago, and that's what he said. He said after the shows, everybody would go out to eat together, and they'd say, like, you know, oh, you won this time, I'll get you next time, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess things have changed a lot. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know. I heard Lee Labrada say this one time, and I think it's true. Either I've gotten to a point now where maybe I've outgrown bodybuilding, or bodybuilding's outgrown me. But I don't have any interest in seeing the contest anymore. It's totally different. And I'm happy that the guys are making a lot of money. I mean, we did everything they did, except we did it for free.
Yeah.
They make money, so it's a good thing, you know.
Yeah. Now, what was your training and diet like back then, Boyer, back in the 60s? Were you guys training like 6 days a week and dieting on low carbs?
I trained 6 days a week. I mean, there's only a couple of times that I varied, you know, my routine naturally. When Arthur Jones came out with the high intensity training, I never liked that. I couldn't get into it because I like to focus on the exercise I'm doing. And even though I trained heavy, wasn't in a rush to get through that, you know. Mm-hmm. And while I think Arthur was onto something, and it was perhaps good at training like say a football team, I think that was but it wasn't really good for bodybuilding. And I tried that, and I must say I had success with that type of training, but on a different variation of that. We're skipping quite ahead. In 1994, I trained like that, but I trained 2 days on, 1 day off.
Okay.
Something like that. And I would do, and basically I got that, kind of developed that routine. It evolved from being friends with Dorian Yates, and where we do a couple of warm-ups, and then our first all-out set would be one set. But we might do a couple of warm-up sets to make sure we were warmed up and do as heavy as possible and go to failure. And then even after that, we would do some negatives.
Okay.
But other than that, I basically always trained 5 or 6 days a week.
So talk a little bit about when you won the Mr. America. How did that feel, winning that in 1969? I know you beat out like Chris Dickerson and Ken Waller was there. How did you feel that competition went?
Well, it was kind of anticlimactic because I knew I had won the Junior Mr. America maybe a month before that. So going into the Mr. America, I felt, well, this was probably going to be my year. But I remember discussing this with Mike Mincer at length one time. We were talking about, well, how did it feel when you won the Mr. America? And Mike said, well, man, he says, I felt great because it was an accomplishment that I had been after for a long time. He said, well, what was your reaction? I said, I never took time to enjoy it. I can well remember, because it was in Chicago. I won the Mr. America in Chicago.
Okay.
And I remember, you know, sitting in the dressing room after it was all over with. I mean, this was maybe 10 minutes after the contest, and I'm thinking, okay, now, well, I won this. Now, what the hell I got to do to try and win the Mr. Universe? I was already focusing on the next thing.
Yeah.
So I never took time to appreciate what I'd accomplished. It was on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that's typical of most competitors, though. We're always we're so hard on ourselves, and we're always saying we never really enjoy the victory. We're always thinking about, winning that one, then you got to win the next one, and you never really get to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was. I always use bodybuilding competitions as kind of like a measuring stick of my progression.
Mm-hmm.
Because, to be honest with you, I never had a whole lot of respect for the judges, because most of those guys, particularly in the days of the AAU, God, those guys acted most of the time like they didn't even want to be there, and they talked really down to bodybuilders. I'll always remember an incident that happened in 1968. I remember this is kind of about the height of the Vietnam War, and Jim Haslip won. We're at the prejudging meeting, and this AAU guy, Rudy Sablo, he's just ordering everybody else around, talking to us like we're a bunch of cattle. And one of the competitors, Dr. Craig Whitehead, who was a captain in the Air Force, I mean, he sat there and he listened to Rudy order us around. And he finally stood up and he says, I don't have to take this shit. He says, I'm done with this. He was dressed in his captain's uniform and he walked out. And I really admired him for that. But being young and not being very experienced, I just sat there. I didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. But I always remember that. I mean, and I appreciated what he did, because he stood up for what he believed in. Even though he wanted to compete in the Mr. America, he wasn't going to be treated like a dog.
Right.
And I really admired the guy for that. And that was it. He never came back and never competed again.
What was your experience like with the Nabba Universe, competing in the Nabba Universe that year in '69?
That was my most fulfilling, satisfying moment, because Oscar Heidenstein, even though there was no money, we didn't have a nice hotel to stay in. We didn't even have a bathroom in a hotel. There was one bathroom on each floor.
Wow.
So, but he treated everybody with such respect. I mean, he had a great love for bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. And you could tell just by the way he put his heart and soul into it. And then you got to remember, this was a contest that John Grimmick won, that Reg Park won, that Bill Pearl won, that Steve Reeves won. So naturally, you wanted to be part of that history.
Right. And then you got to meet guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu, Frank Zane. Was that the year you got to meet a lot of those guys?
Well, I'd actually met Arnold earlier that year. Arnold came to Chicago to visit Sergio, and they went to the Mr. America the year I won. So
that's right. Okay.
I knew of Arnold. I'd seen his pictures in the magazine, but I met him in person then. And then about a month later, I flew out to California, and Cliff Swan was a photographer, and he photographed me for Strength and Health. And I think at that time I met Franco at that time. He had only been in the country one day, couldn't speak any English at all.
Okay.
But I remember him and Arnold coming to pick me up at the airport, and we had. But I was never. People get confused a lot, because I was never really a West Coast guy. Mm-hmm. I was good friends with Joe Gold, did a lot of business with Joe Gold over the years, really admired the guy a lot, but I never really trained at Gold's. Because I always was living back in Louisiana at the time. I didn't move out to California until '79. So by that time, Joe had the World Gym. He wasn't even a part of Gold's anymore at that time.
What did you think of Arnold when you first met him at that Mr. America contest in '69?
Well, he was big. I mean, what his always his advantage was that his height. You know, he wasn't near as arrogant as he is now, but he seemed to be a nice enough guy.
Okay. How about Frank Zane? When did you first meet Frank?
Well, I met Frank well before I ever met Arnold. When I was competing in the local contest, I competed in a contest down in God, I can't remember where it was at, but it was right outside of Tampa, Florida. Once again, Jim Haslip and I were in the contest, and Frank was living in Tampa at the time. He lived in an apartment house right across the street from Harry Smith's gym.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and I was also the very first. So this would have had to been, I guess, back in 1967 maybe, and that I wasn't all in that great a shape, and the only reason I went to compete in the contest, I'd never seen Bill Pearl in person, and he was a guest poser. So I wanted to see Bill Pearl. That's the first time I met Bill Pearl, and once again, we've been lifelong friends ever since then. That, to me, is a real important thing, that bodybuilding has given me the privilege of meeting all these wonderful people and being friends with them.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask you about Bill Pearl. I know you've had a long friendship with him. Tell us a little bit about meeting him and your feelings about Bill.
Well, I don't. You can't say enough nice things about Bill Pearl.
Yeah.
He's one of the humblest guys you will ever meet. He's very giving, and he'll give you a straight opinion about something. You know, and he'll tell you flat out. But what a wonderful guy! And I tell you, one of the things that impressed me the most about Bill. Bill has an older brother, Harold. Harold actually had better genetics than Bill.
Wow, I heard about that.
I only met Harold a couple of times, but when Bill had his gym on Manchester Avenue there in Inglewood, back in California, I went by his gym. That was right after I won the Mr. America, and Harold was just as nice. He was actually big. Everybody talks about how big Bill Pearl was. Harold was even bigger than Bill. You know, so I mean, those guys had some unbelievable genetics, and I think he's a couple of years older than Bill.
What did you think of Bill when you first saw him guest pose, Boyer? Because like we just talked about Sergio, people don't remember how great Sergio was, but Bill Pearl was another one. He was so overpowering on stage and a great poser.
Well, you're right. I mean, Sergio, because of his freakish development and proportion, was unbelievable. But Pearl was like a consummate professional. I mean, the first time I saw him pose, he posed, and it was just unbelievable because he was so big and so powerful, and he knew how to hit poses that really made his physique look even more Herculean. And then he also, one of the things I learned long ago was the transitions. What you do when you move from pose to pose.
Right.
You know, and he was the master at that. And then he came out a second time, and he used to do an old strongman or Eugene Sandow thing he had like a fur posing suit and the sandals and all that stuff. He did that. And then he also did some strongman stuff, like he tore license plates in half and bend spikes and stuff like that. So that was all part of his professional show. And it was just incredible. But his physique, the best way I can describe it, he's a man without any effort at all demands dignity. I mean, you just automatically respect this guy graciously when you see the guy. He's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
It's just an aura he has about it.
I agree with you 100%. I met Bill myself when I was like 25 years old. They had a big the club industry show in Chicago, you know, the trade show for the fitness.
Oh, yeah.
And when Bill was working for Life Fitness, I remember I was a 25-year-old kid, and I was walking through the expo, and I saw him, and I was wondering if I should go over and meet Bill Pearl. And he came up to me, shook my hand, and said, "You know, you got a kind of physique that we had back in my day." And I was just so blown away that he came up to me and complimented me before I could even approach him.
Well, he is one of the most nicest, sincere individuals on planet Earth. And the guy looks incredible for his age. He's 80 years old.
I know.
He's just unbelievable.
Yeah, God bless him. A long life.
His mind is as sharp as a tack. I mean, he sees you one time. He might see you 20 years from now. He's still going to remember John Hansen. Hey, John, how are you?
I know.
He's the best I've ever met about remembering names.
Right. That's amazing. So continuing on with your career, Boyer, you went back to the Mr. Universe in 1970, and you went into the pro division at the Nabba Universe, and you won the short class, and Arnold, of course, won the overall there.
Yeah. Well, oh, God. On the way over there, I caught the flu. So, that was a miserable time. But I managed to get through the contest. interesting thing about the 1970, we had the contest on a Saturday night, the Nabba Universe. The next night, Sunday night, we flew all the way from London to Columbus, Ohio, and competed in the Mr. World contest.
Right.
That was, boy, that was some kind of trip. There was me, Arnold, Franco, and Dave Draper.
Right.
Yeah, another fantastic guy.
Yeah. And so Jim Lorimer arranged a flight for you guys so you guys could get to the contest on time and compete.
Well, what happened, our flight was delayed in London. We were several hours late. So I still to this day don't know how he managed to pull the strings. But when we landed in New York, we were ushered off the plane. I don't ever remember going through customs. We just immediately ushered off the plane, went out a side door, a car took us over to a private jet, and it seems like within 20 minutes, as soon as they got our baggage, we were on our way to Columbus. And when we got to Columbus, everything else was already over with. The weightlifting was over with. Even the amateur universe, or amateur world, excuse me, was already over with. So when we finally get to the auditorium, I don't know how long the crowd had been sitting there, but it must have been sitting there for some amount of time. And then we had the contest that night.
Yeah, everybody talks about
They were just sitting there waiting for us to get there to have the contest.
Well, everybody talks about that contest as that was the show where Arnold first beat Sergio, but you were also in that show. What did you think about Arnold beating Sergio at that show?
Well, Arnold was better. He was coming off of a win.
Right.
I don't think Sergio was fully prepared for that show. But then, 2 weeks later in the Olympia, Sergio looked. It might have been 3 weeks, but it wasn't very long. But Sergio looked unbelievable at the Olympia.
Mm-hmm. And then Arnold beat him again.
Right.
Yeah. So then we go into. Now you never went over to the IFBB right away, right? You stayed with the. Oh no, I'm sorry. You went into the IFBB in '71. You won the Mr. America there.
Well, no, I didn't. I went. Well, this is what happened. Eddie Silvestri used to hold the Mr. International contest in Tijuana.
Right.
And the guy would give these unbelievable trophies. I remember when I won the Mr. International, the trophy was so big. It must have weighed 120 pounds.
Really?
It was marble and bronze. So when I get back, when we get back from Tijuana, I said, I can't carry this thing on the plane. So we had to disassemble it, pack it in a box, and ship it home on a Greyhound bus. So while I'm out here, they said, well, next weekend is Weider's IFBB Mr. America. I said, well, I'm here. I might as well enter. Well, Ken Waller won that contest.
Okay.
So Ken Waller won the contest. Then the next weekend, Dan Lurie used to hold his WBBG Professional Mr. World contest. So we went in that contest. I was fortunate enough to win. But I didn't enter the IFBB, the Mr. Olympia. I didn't go into that because I was satisfied with just competing in the Nabba Universe. I went back several times in that. But Arnold called me in '76 and he said, I'm putting on the Olympia in Columbus. Will you compete in it? And I had met Jim Lorimer several years earlier. See, when Dennis won the Mr. America in '67, Lorimer organized that contest. That's when I first met him and became friends with him. So I knew Jim was part of that. So I said, yeah, I'll compete in it. So I didn't go to the Nabba. I decided, okay, I'll compete in the Mr. Olympia. So I get to Columbus, and Ben Weider says, oh, you're a Nabba guy. You can't compete in the Mr. Olympia. I said, man, I'm already here. I said, Arnold invited me. So I will say this. Arnold stood up for me. He said, look, he said, I invited Boyer to compete in a contest. He's got to compete. I was ready to compete in the contest. So Ben Weider relented, and that was how I got into Mr. Olympia the first time.
How many times did you win the Nabba Universe then, Boyer?
I won the Nabba Universe, let's see, Three times. I won in '69, in '73, and '75. Okay. And then I stopped going after that, and after that I just competed in IFBB contests. By that time the Mr. Olympia and the IFBB was growing a lot stronger.
Right.
And then you got to remember, never forget one guy who doesn't get much credit, and that's Wayne DeMilia. Had it not been for Wayne DeMilia, professional bodybuilding would have never, ever developed into what it was today. He was a catalyst behind all of that. He was the one that started all the Grand Prix in Europe. He was the one that created the Night of Champions. And that by far, the Night of Champions was much more exciting than even the Mr. Olympia. I don't know if it was because all the acts that he and Charlie Blake created, or if it was just a crowd in New York. But I tell you, those people would go nuts. When I remember that was quite an exciting time.
Wow.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. And then he really, one thing with IFBB, they started with the sanction fees, and they raised them so high, nobody could afford to put the contest on anymore. So that's when Wayne got involved and said, okay, we're going to put the contest on. And he made it very, very successful. In other words, his venues for the Mr. Olympia was best. I mean, they used to hold it at the Mandalay Bay, which is far superior to where they hold it today.
Right. Yeah, people may not remember that, but you're right. Back then, there was only the Mr. Olympia. That was professional bodybuilding until Wayne came along, and then he started creating. I think he started. What was it? First '78, I think was the first one, right, where he started creating the Night of the Champions and then all the Grand Prix events.
I never will forget when I was after. I guess Ben Weeder decided I was a good guy. He invited me as a guest poser. They were, in those days, that was before they hold the World Championships. It was the IFBB Mr. Universe.
Right.
So it was held in Montreal.
Right, I remember that.
Go to Montreal and guest pose, and I had no idea who Wayne DeMilia was. He comes up to me. Here's a guy that's got like about a 3-day growth, kind of not dressed in anything important. He says, would you be willing to compete in a contest? He said, if I paid all your expenses, and he said, the prize money would be $5,000. I said, sure, I'll do it. I never thought no more about it. So maybe 6-8 months go by, I get a contract in the mail from Wayne, and that's how we became friends. And he really worked, and he did a lot. And in those days, see, people don't remember, but in those days, not only did you compete in the contest, but you had to go out and help sell the tickets. I remember we'd go, like when they held the Grand Prix in Miami, we went into Miami a week early. We hit every possible gym in the Miami area trying to sell tickets.
Really?
So you go out and promote the tickets all day long and hope people would show up so they would see you compete in the contest. Today, all the guys do, they got to show up. I'd like for them to think, hey, maybe we contributed to all the benefits that you're having today. Because even in those days, they had no food allowance. You showed up at the contest, maybe they paid your hotel bill. That was about it. So we finally said, okay, Wayne, how about covering our food expenses and some hotel, and he agreed to it. And that's how all of that got started.
Wow. Now, when you were competing in the Mr. Olympia in the late 1970s, when Franco won and then Frank Zane won 3 years in a row, what did you think about those competitions? Anything stand out in those? Because I remember I used to go to those shows, Boyer. I went to 77, 78, 79 when I was a teenager. And I remember when they started those Grand Prix events, you would compete in almost every show. But at the Olympia, you always hit your peak. I was always amazed at how great improvements you made every year consistently from 77, 78, 79, and 80.
You know what? That's a great mystery. I'd compete in those contests, and I would manage, I guess, to get in decent shape. But it seems like I always managed to hit it right on the money at the Mr. Olympia. I mean, it seems like I got it all together. And, that's a mystery. I don't know how I did it. It just worked out that way.
What did you think about Frank Zane when he was winning in the contest as a Mr. Olympia winner?
Well, I thought Frank was always good. He was always a professional. And Frank, like most bodybuilders, he's a thinking man's bodybuilder. He knew his body well, and he always managed to get in shape. Now Frank was not big by any means. You know, he wasn't a massive bodybuilder, but he really knew how to display his physique to the absolute best. He was a master poser. Let me back up one thing. Nobody knew a damn thing about posing until Ed Corney came along.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw Ed Corney, I said, wow, the rest of us are so far behind. We got to catch up to this guy. And that's when I really even worked harder on my posing. And then you had guys like Zane was an excellent poser. Chris Dickerson was an excellent poser. I never ever allowed myself to think that I looked great in a contest. Standing in the lineup, John, you probably wouldn't even notice it. And I can't explain it because some people have it and some people don't. Okay? And that's showmanship. But I could come alive when I went through the posing routine because I really worked hard on the transitions, the motions, the smoothness and everything. That helped me out a lot. And it seemed to be, like for example, let's use Frank Zane for example. Frank Zane looked excellent, standing relaxed. You noticed it?
Yeah.
He posed, he looked good, but he didn't look spectacular. Another example, Chris Dickerson looked magnificent, standing relaxed. But once again, when he posed, he looked good, but it didn't jump out at you. But let's take another guy, for example, Casey Viator. Okay, Casey looked okay standing in lineup, but when he started posing, his body just exploded.
Yeah.
It just, you said, wow, where did all that muscle come from? And I like to think that I had some of that ability as well. See, standing A looks all right, but when I hit a double bicep, hell, you noticed it, you know.
Right.
And that's the way. I can't explain why some people are like that and some people are not. But I gave Frank. He always was a professional. I think he deserved his titles. He really did.
Okay. And then some people today may also not realize that back then, the only time the bodybuilders used music was when they did guest posing. But for the competitions, they really didn't have music until the late 70s. And then I think you really used that to your advantage too, because you always picked very inspirational music. And I remember reading an article once where you said that you feel that music is an emotion and that you can get the audience motivated.
I've always loved music. I mean, and it's so emotional. I mean, to be honest with you, if I've never, this may sound crazy to you, if I've never ever got into bodybuilding, the one desire I would have had, I would have wanted to be a blues piano player.
Oh, really? Okay.
I love blues, and for some reason, all the great, best piano players came out of New Orleans. You go from Jerry Lee Lewis to Fats Domino to Pine Top Perkins, all those guys came out of New Orleans. Why, I don't know. It's just like all the great blues guitarists came out of Clarksdale, Mississippi. Go figure, but that's how it was. You know?